Hi, today I'm going to be reading The Seven Silly Eaters by Marianne Hoberman. The pictures are by Marla Frazee, and as I'm reading this, I'd like you to take a good look at the pictures. One of the reasons why I like this book is because of the rhyming, so you can pay attention to that. And the pictures are outstanding, so I'll draw your attention to that as we go through. So, The Seven Silly Eaters.
No. Okay.
And if you look at this first page, it shows the house as they are beginning their journey. And if you look, you can see that Mrs. Peters looks like she's going to have a baby. So pay attention to that, and we'll take a look at the house at the end also. And they have a dog. Not so long ago, they say, a mother lived just like today. Mrs. Peters was her name. Her little boy was named the same. Now Peter was a perfect son in every way except for one. When Peter was just 1 year old, he did not like his milk served cold. He did not like his milk served hot. He liked it warm, and he would not drink it if he was not sure it was the proper temperature. But Mrs. Peters did not mind. She was a mother sweet and kind. And when his milk spilled on the floor, she patiently prepared some more. She'd take the bottle from the shelf and chuckle softly to herself, "What a silly sort of eater is my darling baby Peter." When Peter had not yet turned 2, another baby, sweet and new, was born, dear Lucy, small and fair, with big blue eyes and curly hair. But long before this child was grown, she had opinions of her own, of what she'd eat and what she'd not. She hated milk, both cold and hot, and warm was worst of all. Instead, whenever Lucy dear was fed, she bellowed for pink lemonade, not from a can, oh no, homemade. But Mrs. Peters did not mind. She squeezed each lemon to its rind, while mopping milk up from the floor and patiently preparing more. She'd take the lemons from the shelf and giggle softly to herself, "What a silly pair of eaters are Lucy dear and Peter Peters." So if you notice now, I have a cat. We got the milk. It's on the stove. We got the lemons. They're having fun in the summer. We'll see what happens. When Lucy grew and Peter grew, until he was 3 and she was 2, and who was 1? Why, little Jack, with eyes so brown and hair so black, a happy baby, never cross, but all he'd eat was applesauce. He was never cross, that means he was never angry. Peeling apples by the pound, Mrs. Peters faintly frowned. She'd take the apples from the shelf and murmur weakly to herself, "What a silly bunch of eaters are Lucy, Jack, and Peter Peters." And if you notice here, it's fall in this picture, and everybody's having a good time. They got their apples that she's peeling. Mr. Peters, he's planting another tree. Looks to me like it's a lemon tree. Peter, Lucy, and young Jack had another brother, Mac. Mac was charming, round, and plump, but if his oatmeal had a lump, Mac would dump it on the cat. Mrs. Peters hated that. I think the cat didn't like it either. But since she loved her children 4, she'd strain the oatmeal 2 times more. She'd take it from the pantry shelf and mumble sadly to herself, What a foolish group of eaters are all my precious little Peters. So, and here we have a winter scene here. We've got cats running around and dogs. Lucy is very upset. Her brother apparently hit her with a snowball maybe. We got toilet training in the back. It's a big family with a lot going on. Before another year was through, who came along? Why, Mary Lou. She was a darling, sweet and bright, and had a healthy appetite. That is, as long as she was fed soft and squishy homemade bread. Poor Mrs. Peters got no rest, but still she did her very best. She'd take the flour from the shelf and mutter feebly to herself, "What a fussy bunch of eaters are all my lovely little Peters." And if you look at this picture, you can see there's a lot going on there. We've got we've got a bunch of kittens in the background here in a box, so looks like they're going to have more cats. And everybody's doing their own thing. Mr. and Mrs. Peters are getting by as best they can. A year rolled by, the children grew. They really are a splendid crew, sighed Mrs. Peters, pinning pins and diapering her brand new twins. Little sisters, quick and smart, impossible to tell apart. But Flo liked poached eggs, Fran liked fried. If she mixed them up, they cried. Tired to the very bone, Mrs. Peters groaned a groan. She'd take the eggs down from the shelf and whisper weakly to herself, "What persnickety young eaters are all my 7 little Peters." Persnickety. It's a good word. Maybe you can use it in a sentence with your parents. And if you look, there's a lot going on in this one too. Now time went by as time will do, and as it passed, the children grew. The problem was that as they grew, their appetites kept growing too, but not their choice of what to eat. Each child continued to repeat. They wanted what they'd had before. The trouble was they wanted more. So here they profile every child, and they're each wanting something from the mom or the dad. What they want is the same thing that they had before. Creamy oatmeal, pots of it. Homemade bread and lots of it. Peeling apples by the peck. Mrs. Peters was a wreck. Here she's not very happy if you look. The children are all hiding. We got a few here. They're all kind of letting her have her space because she's having a big kind of a meltdown here. And if you look, there's bread in the oven, there's eggs flying around, there's milk and pots of stuff all over the place. Mr. Peters doing his thing. He's bringing in all the fruit. So, peeling apples by the peck. What do you think a peck is? You should look it up in the dictionary if you don't know. She wiped her brow and heaved a sigh. Another year was passing by. In fact, she realized with sorrow her birthday would arrive tomorrow. Drearily, she shook her head and wearily went up to bed. And if you look here, she doesn't even have any peace going up to bed. Somebody's clinging on her as she's making her way up to bed. So, clearly things are not going very well. What do you think is going to happen? She thought the children had forgot her special day, but they had not. At crack of dawn, they all began to carry out their secret plan. While Mrs. Peters would be fed a birthday breakfast in her bed, a breakfast made of all the foods that kept them in such happy moods. And I like this picture because it shows they're all sleeping in the same loft here. They got cribs and all kinds of beds, and everybody's sleeping in the same bedroom, basically. So while their weary mother slept, down the stairs the children crept, and from the cupboards and the shelves, happily they helped themselves. Cheerfully they chopped and stirred, preparing what they each preferred. But despite the pains they took, since nobody knew how to cook, to measure things, or make them hot, the more they tried, the worse it got. So here they're all ready, but things are not going so well. Poor Mac's oatmeal turned out lumpy, which made poor Mac turn grim and grumpy. In fact, the lumps got him so cross, he dumped them in Jack's applesauce. This bothered Jack so much, he threw it in the dough of Mary Lou, who tossed the mishmash that made straight into Lucy's lemonade. And that put her in such a huff, she poured the icky, sticky stuff into the double frying pan that held the eggs of Flo and Fran, who flung the hodgepodge on the spot into the milk in Peter's pot. Hodgepodge, that's another cool word. But when they saw what they had done, they wished they had never begun. They hardly slept a wink that night, and still things hadn't turned out right. And even though they tried their best, it hadn't worked. They were depressed. Their heads are down. They'd be in trouble too, unless they found some place to hide the mess. The oven seemed the perfect spot. They all forgot it still was hot. They stuck the pot inside, and then they all went back to bed again. So if you look, the dog and the cats are already checking things out, and the dog is there. They're just going to go back to bed. The clock struck 6, but on they slept. Meanwhile, their mother softly stepped down to the kitchen, smelled the smell. What could it be? She could not tell. It smelled so good, she sniffed some more and opened up the oven door. She woke the children with her cries. They all came running in surprise. And in the kitchen, what they found was Mrs. Peters dancing round. And in the oven, no mistake, a pink and plump and perfect cake. And if you look at the animals, they've all had their fill of what was left in those pots. And as their mother danced with glee, she cried, "A birthday cake for me? A birthday cake still piping hot? To think I thought that you forgot. Now tell me, please, how did you make this pink and plump and perfect cake, so high and light and smooth as silk?" "It's smooth as silk from all my milk," said Peter. "Lucy said it's pink from all my lemonade, I think." "And from my apples," added Jack. "My oatmeal made it soft," said Mac. "My bread dough too," said Mary Lou. Said Fran and Flo, "As for its size, it was our eggs that made it rise." Then everybody sniffed some more and danced around the kitchen floor. So here she is, thanking everybody for their help in making her perfect cake. They put the cake upon a dish and lit the candles. "Make a wish," the children cried, "before you blow." And Mrs. Peters did just so. And what is more, her wish came true, as birthday wishes always do. And if you look here, they got this wonderful picnic. They got a lot of homemade gifts here on the blanket. She's wearing a cool hat. And from that day to this, 'tis said, the Peters family all is fed a single, simple meal, just one, a meal that's good for everyone, a meal on which they all agree, made from their secret recipe. They all take turns in mixing it. They all take turns in fixing it. It's thick to beat and quick to bake. It's fine to eat and fun to make. It's Mrs. Peters' birthday cake. And now, if you look at this picture, they got a cool tree house in this tree. They got their fruit trees here that were planted years ago that they've been using every year. The tree here that was teeny is now really big, and they're all having their picnic outside. Hope you enjoyed the story. Until next time, bye.